is being held captive, tortured daily, that prisoner does not have freedom of choice. That prisoner does not have access to social welfare programs. That prisoner does not have anything available to them. So when that prisoner should get an opportunity to escape and to kill its captors and its torturers and to release himself from his prison, we say yes. We say that is what you should do, and that is what we say is relevant to these women. We say that they are prisoners, that there are no other options available to them. The fact that, we could increase social welfare programs means nothing if these programs are not accessible to them, which they are not. So we think that what we are looking at here is a case of a tortured prisoner retaliating against the people who torture them, and that's how we see this debate. The two things I'm going to talk about today are, one, what is relevant to a murder trial? We're going to discuss what exactly is brought up in a case, what are A, things that are looked at in all murder trials, and B, things that bring special cases. The second thing we're going to look at is future harms. What's going to happen if this policy is passed? Who's going to be hurt the most? What should we look out for society? Before I get into that, we're going to do a little bit of rebuttal. So, we think, like I said earlier, that these social welfare programs and other alternatives that the government will try to bring to you that this woman has available to her is a lie. These things are not actually available to her. Why? These things are not available because she lives in a state of psychological terror. She knows if she tries to call a social worker, she will be beaten even harder that night. If she tries to talk to a police officer, she will be beaten even harder. If she tries to attack him, she will be beaten. The only option that she has available to her is to submit and then to finally kill him and release herself when she has a chance, and we think that that is the model here. Now, Nati spoke about this part of the human being that is the will, that is the freedom, that is the rational choice. What we tell you is that this part of this woman was systematically killed by the person who battered her. When he's battering her into a state of submission, into a state where she doesn't have freedom of choice, where she doesn't have rational thinking. That part of her humanity was killed. Now, First Government has marginalized their case completely because when they talk about 10 years in the future, they put time as their criteria. We think that that is the far extreme case of what we're talking about. We think that we're not talking about women who were in a bad marriage, who were battered, managed to get out, 30 years later, in revenge, went back to their husband and stabbed him in the middle of the night. No. We think that 99% of the cases, and what this debate is about, are women who are still living under the psychological torture. And how do we know that? And why do we assume that? Because the motion states that these women are medically certified as having a medical syndrome. If it's 10 years later or 30 years later, they will not have that medical certification, and it is on this that we rely. And it is therefore that we say that these women are still living in a state of psychological horror. And this is why First Government is no longer relevant to the debate. Great. They said that we can't use everything, right? Like environment, where we grew up, we had our childhood, that all affects us. We think that's good and well, unless it's torture. Torture is something different than eating a lot of ice cream when you're a kid or something like that. But you know what? If a doctor could sign off on the fact that you ate a lot of ice cream when you were a kid and that affects how you killed someone now, we'd buy that too. Why? Because the doctor says that it affected you to a point where you couldn't think clearly, the doctor says. And we think that we can pretty much understand rationally why torture would do that to a person. So now we're going to get into my 2 points. The first one, what is relevant in a murder trial? So we see that 3 things are brought up in a murder trial. 1 is the circumstances of the event, what actually happened. 2 is a previous relationship between the people. And 3 are personal individual factors. So in the event itself, we don't see anything unique here. We see that the event could be like any other murder. The other 2, personal relationship and individual factors. How could you ignore this huge relationship that's gone on between them? If there's been torture, if there's been abuse, that is relevant to a murder trial. Now, personal. If a person in a murder trial has a medically diagnosed psychological, neurological condition, that is relevant to a murder trial. We see that the government wants to ignore the entire basis of the crime, and that's what my partner talked to you about, that the psychological reasoning is the reasoning behind the crime, and we think that we really can't ignore that. No. Okay, so when do we actually see things that are relevant to change the entire circumstance of the trial. And that we see in 2 cases, 1 in mental illness and 2 in children. Why? Because you're not fully in control of yourself, you're not aware of your actions. And we say that battered women are the same. We say that when someone is battered, she was built into a machine, I'm going to take it in a minute, she was built into a machine that was capable of killing him because there was no other opportunity. She wasn't fully aware of what she was doing, she definitely wasn't thinking rationally, and this is the same as a prisoner who releases themselves from prison. Go ahead.
And when we have prisoners of war, do we allow them to reversely torture and kill the people who tortured them? Or are there some protections that...
we don't, because we're the one torturing them. Of course we don't. But you know what? I think from their standpoint of view, that's the only option available to them, and if you've accepted that that's their only option, then our point wins. Okay, future harms. Now, when we say that we're not going to accept this medical certification, we're saying that it's not considered legitimate. We're saying that it's not real. That it's kind of, something that maybe she thinks, but it's not really crucial here. So we think that this is going to be very bad. Why? For the battered women. She's going to go to prison for the crime of being battered, of being abused to the point where she can no longer think. Now, we think that more than the woman, society is the criminal here because they couldn't protect her and they punish her when she tried to protect herself. Other battered women are further going to look at this. There's a threat hanging over their head, they're trapped in a horror, and they can't stop it. And what happens when we pass this policy is we see that government is now complicit in their torture. Government is now a part of it because they're not helping her, and they are giving power to the batterer, and that's the last part of the future harm. We're empowering the torturers. As long as they torture their spouse slowly and systematically and over a period of time and into the point where their spouse can't see an alternative, that's fine. But the minute that the spouse tries to kill them, that's not okay anymore. As the government, we put our foot down and we think that that's the problem. Okay, so we think that the government is trying to win a big moral victory. So let's look at what the government is trying to win. Under their policy, the torturers are still alive and well and are not being dealt with in any significant way, and the message that we're sending is empowering them. And the victims that are being tortured now have no way out, and they're trapped and they're stuck in hell, and that is made by your government. For these reasons, congratulations on the moral victory.